Before its release, Destiny earned the title of most pre-ordered video game of all time, so chances are if you're watching this review, then you've probably already played Destiny. It is Bungie's first game in 4 years, and it's their first non-Halo game in 13 years. Destiny is available on multiple platforms from both last generation and the current one, except for the PC, which frankly is a shame. It is a gorgeous first-person science fiction shooter with plenty of options for single-player, cooperative, and competitive multiplayer gamers. Now, before I dig into the nitty-gritty with this review, I'd like to say that yes, I have greatly enjoyed my time with Destiny, and yes, I can recommend it for purchase. However, Destiny is far from a perfect game, and it's probably far from what many people were expecting as well. Set in a post-apocalyptic future, players take on the role of a Guardian, a soldier resurrected by the Traveler, a mysterious floating gigantic sphere over the last free city of humanity. The Traveler is somehow responsible for bringing humanity into a golden age of space travel and interplanetary development, but now a vague threat called the Darkness is pushing back the light of the Traveler. How is all this happening? That's a good question. Exposition is not Destiny's strong suit. In fact, I definitely say that the story and narrative is Destiny's weakest trait. Characters are introduced, often without purpose or being named, and then disappear back into the ether without any sort of resolution for their conflict. Who you are as a player is anyone's guess. This is a total shame because as a shooter, Destiny is resting on some major potential, and the game hints at some great themes by naming its futuristic soldiers and enemies after mythological and fantasy characters and creatures of the past. This lack of fleshing out of story and characters comes at an odd contrast when comparing it to the super defined and established visual setting the game presents. All the set pieces in the game are phenomenal, from the view of the last free city to worn-out Russia, to the moon, to Mars, and beyond. Every environment is gorgeously realized, and they're a joy to explore. As a shooter experience, Destiny falls somewhere between a loot-based experience like Borderlands and a semi-persistent world like a classic MMO, but it definitely lands much closer to Borderlands than I was expecting. Missions are in a large shared environment. That much is true. Do they need to be in a shared environment? Not really. Gamers will see a small handful of other players shooting down baddies around them on their way to their next destination, but enemies will spawn so regularly that any other humans that are encountered often provide little more than living decoration for the environment. Even when players are within proximity to one another, they can't hear each other on their headsets unless they're within the same fire group, so asking for directions or thanking someone for a resurrection is out of the question. It's a shame too, it feels like a lot of missed potential. In terms of large-scale Rift-like public enemy invasions go, I only encountered one in my entire playthrough. Either I lucked out or they simply don't spawn nearly enough. I'm thinking it's the latter. But co-op play is solid. Completing missions or doing patrols with a friend definitely enhances the entire experience. Every mission in the game can be done with a friend. There are a few that can only be done with other players, and in those circumstances, the game does a good job of matching you up with other players your level. If you're concerned with fighting over loot, you need not worry. Everyone gets their own. Besides that, loot drops are far too few and far too limited. I could probably count the number of actual loot crates I found in the environment with 2 hands. Up until about level 17, many items that are dropped will be a clear improvement over what you're carrying. In terms of controls and gameplay, Destiny is built solid. The shooting is fun, frenetic, and even though I'm much more comfortable playing first-person shooters with a mouse and keyboard, it didn't take me long to get into a groove with a controller. I will say this, however. Destiny's auto-aim is pretty generous with headshots. I was pulling off shots I know I don't have the skills for. One of the most annoying aspects about Destiny is the number of needless chores it dumps on the player. Some players will see this as grind, others will see this as evidence of ideas that were half-baked by Bungie and never fully realized. Both are probably right. For example, the subclass system is marvelously misused. Players can't unlock their subclasses until level 15, which, at that point, gamers who are only interested in the single-player and cooperative experience might as well not bother. When you start a new class, you have to unlock everything all over again, from your special moves down to using your grenades. And to oddly compound the issue, when you unlock simple things like grenades, the game makes you go into the subclass's submenu and turn them on. Who doesn't want to use grenades? Who doesn't want to use double jump? Instead of giving players a tried and true traditional subclass tree menu where they can customize how they want to spend skill points, or by saying, at level 13 you can either use cluster grenades or homing grenades, players are given an illusion of choice as they unlock skills in their menu. Have a new message on Earth? You have to travel all the way back from whatever planet you're on just to open it up and find out that it's a tiny item. You could have just sent me an email. And what is no doubt going to be everyone's sore point is that after completing a mission, players are automatically ported back to their ships in orbit. That doesn't sound so bad, but the following mission might take place only a few yards from where you just were. And now when you start the next mission, at the landing point, you have to slug through the exact same environment again. With each planet having multiple missions, players will trudge down the same paths ad nauseum. It would have been nice to keep the maps open, let players finish a mission, pick up and complete a few small patrols, and then progress with the story naturally. But obviously the game isn't all bad. It's a blast to play, and visually polished to a wonderful degree. The co-op is great fun. There's enough competitive multiplayer options to keep most people happy for a while. There's even daily and weekly challenges added to the game in an attempt to keep things interesting. And the game is a challenge. If you don't find it challenging, the difficulty options will test your mettle. The music is spot on, the sound effects are outstanding, especially your speeder bike that Destiny calls a swallow. The voice acting, on the other hand, is a miss. Players will hear the marvelous voice of Peter Dinklage the most, who plays the role of Ghost, your floating automaton sidekick who's sort of a mix of R2-D2 from Star Wars, and Wheatley from Portal 2, but has the personality of neither. Whether that has to do with Dinklage giving an intentionally flat robotic performance, or if he was given poor direction for the role, no one will ever know. The point is, I know Dinklage can deliver with much more conviction in life, and I feel his character would have been much better if he was a lot more dynamic in his vocal presentation. There is more than enough enjoyable content to warrant a full-priced purchase for Destiny. However, with its lackluster storytelling, its occasionally grindy gameplay and presentation, and seriously underwhelming loot drops, it might not be what many were expecting. It's not a bad game. I loved my time with it, and I can't wait to dive back into it, but it definitely does not deserve the honor of being the most pre-ordered video game of all time. This video was made possible through generous fan donations on Patreon.